So, guys, I think it's super important uh, when you are a teacher, a leader, and when you are providing advice to people, especially when people are paying for your advice, for your trust, um, for your leadership, that you look into things and spend money on the things that they might want to know about or might assume some things about, or might be afraid to spend money on. And that's why I will present to you probably something that you never expected to see in this training, and probably something you won't see in any other training. EDMGhostProducer.com. Uh, and as I'm sure you can gather, this video isn't necessarily a plug for them because I don't work with them. But at the same time, I don't have much that's bad to say about them as far as what they do. You may not agree with it. It doesn't matter. I'm here to tell you that in this industry, um, people use this website as well as others, as well as people who don't really have a website but are just sort of known and have a name in the scene for being a ghost producer. So this video will sort of be a catch-all for that. Um, if you want to learn to produce, I don't really obviously recommend using a ghost producer. A co-producer is a different thing. Um, but basically at this point, I am your co-producer. So, you know, getting the advice of an older or more experienced mentor producer isn't really necessary, because that's essentially what you have in me. But I did go ahead and spend money on this website a few years ago, and it's not a scam. You literally pay money and you get the track that you paid for. Um, I did this for a few different reasons. Number one, I did this to see if it was real because I just couldn't believe it. Back then, I was so naive, and I was just sure that this was a scam. It's not. I did not get scammed out of my money. The track that I picked is exactly what I got. And the cool thing is, I also got the stems of the track that I bought. So that gave me, as a very green producer, a way to take a peek behind the curtain, if you will. So that was cool. I not only got the track itself, but I got the stems for it as well. Um, whoops. So, uh, aside from that, the only thing that I can really say is that these tracks are made by different people. So, if you are going to go the route of getting through this training and realizing that maybe being a producer or maybe a great producer isn't for you, you just kind of want to develop your ear and sort of be, for lack of a better way of putting it, an executive producer where you know the sounds you want and you can describe the sounds you want, but you don't want to be the one turning the knobs and clicking the mouse to take that idea from outside of your mind and onto a computer screen, um, inside of a DAW. So you have the idea, but you're going to basically pay what essentially becomes an engineer, whether they're a producer or not, or they can mix and master or not. I'm just saying, at that point, you're the producer or the executive producer. You state your idea, and an engineer makes it happen, or a producer makes it happen. Um, so when you are on a site like this, you're still going to have to use your ears because um, not everybody that can produce well mixes well, um, and vice versa, and every other shade of gray in between the black and the white of those extremes. So all I'm saying is use your ears. Before you drop $700 or $350 on a track, um, just make sure that it sounds how you want it to sound. For me, make sure it sounds like commercial future house or progressive house or commercial deep house or big room. Um, don't buy a track for hundreds of dollars that still needs a mix down or still needs mixed well. Uh, you know, it should be a complete package, and if it sounds like it doesn't quite match up to that of the commercial standards of your genre, you may want to rethink buying it, because once you get it, you're still going to need to mix it, um, and then likely master it. And not every track on this site is like that. There's a lot of tracks on here that I can tell you from firsthand experience of a social experiment that I may eventually release the details on. I was able to buy a track on here, and because although I wasn't a super experienced producer, I knew what a well mixed track sounded like because I had listened to hundreds, if not thousands, of them over the years. So you yourself may not know everything there is to know about layering and producing and mixing and mastering, but when you hear a quality, polished track, you know it, you know? And that's kind of where I was. So I found a track on here that was quality and polished, and I bought it. And at one point, I was able to sign it if I wanted to one of the top record labels in our industry. So, and maybe some of you that's very enticing, but understand that you may not have the same experience. So there may have been an element of luck involved in what I did, although I really don't think so. More so what it was certainty. I knew what kind of track I was after. I just so happened to find a track that fit that criteria, and it was professional sounding, which, kind of sort of by default leads me to say it was professionally mixed because it sounded tight. It sounded good. It sounded like a track in that genre should sound. Um, Sent it to a label that basically it sounded like it fitted into, and they were ready to sign it. After about a month of hearing nothing, they were ready to throw a contract at me. So, um, I think the biggest point to take away from this is that there's more than one way to get to an end goal, of being signed by a big label if that's your goal. Um, in my experience, I don't recommend it at all. But if you did want to take that route, even if it wasn't with a ghost production, if it was just with your own productions, um, it's understandable, and you can get there. But so just understand that I didn't want to do what almost every other single person does out there, which is tiptoe around this idea. I figured for less than $1,000 a couple years ago, this won't make or break me. So let's do what most people don't, and let's jump, and let's see where we land. And I did. And in the short term, it was fine. But I do challenge you to think twice, because if you don't want to be an all-star producer, that's okay. If you have ideas in your head, but for one reason or another, you don't want to turn the knobs to get those ideas out of your head and onto paper or onto screen, I guess you would say, that's understandable. But I will say that where you save time, something else is sacrificed, and that's money. In flirting with that social experiment to see how far I could push it, I soon realized that, are you really, every time you want to put out a track, going to risk, on average $500? Sometimes it's cheaper, sometimes it's more expensive, sometimes it's basically right there. So just keep that in mind, because that's a pretty heavy blow to the bank account every single time you want to do that. And you know, that on top of other things like marketing it can get pretty expensive. And then if you don't achieve the results with that you wanted, like getting signed to the label you intended to, it's a pretty hard blow to the gut. So, but everybody's different, and that may not be your path, but I did just want to touch on this momentarily. See you guys in the next video.